Hello, my name's Scott Davis. Welcome to New World Birth. This is the care and feeding of a New World Age report for the Gregorian date of December 28, 2015, and 1 Eek or Wind in the Mayan Zolkin calendar, with Venus entering Sagittarius, Mercury entering Aquarius, Mars entering Scorpio, Mercury and Jupiter turning retrograde, Mercury returning to Capricorn, and the Capricorn New Moon. December 28th is 1 Eek or Wind, which carries the themes of air, breath, life force, prana, chi, that which animates life, inspiration, imagination, the spark of creativity and spirit, communication, and the dissemination of seeds and ideas. The day glyph for wind is a T-shaped cross, which represents the Mayan god of wind, and it's also symbolic of trees, which restore the life energy to the air. This 13-day period would be a good time to communicate your inspiration and connect with the life force that makes you unique. And it's an interesting item of note about this wind triscenis, which is associated with communication, is that we have the planet associated with communication, Mercury, at the peak of its power on 1 Wind, as it stopped prior to turning retrograde on January 5th. And as we're beginning a new Gregorian month, during this Trisena, I thought I'd discuss the metaphysics of the upcoming month. January is the first month, and with the digits of 2016, when we add them together, we get 10. And then we add the 1 and the 0, and it tells us that we're in a 1 month in numerology. And basic numerology reduces numbers to 1 through 9. So when we think about the arc, the 1 represents a time of new beginnings. And the numerology of January and February 2016 repeat November and December of 2015, with January being a 1 month and February being a 2 month. And this is somewhat rare that we're beginning a new numerological cycle as we begin a new Gregorian year, and made even rarer in that all the planets are moving direct and that there are no planets retrograde from December 26th to January 4th. So the 10 and the 1 are represented by the Wheel of Fortune and Magician archetypes in the tarot cards. The Wheel of Fortune is about prosperity and abundance that comes from being objective, flexible, and creative. To quote Ruth Ross, all prosperity begins in the mind and is dependent upon the full use of our creative imaginations. The 1 card is the Magician, which represents the principle of communication represented by the god Mercury. So it's another interesting synchronicity related to communication during the wind Trisena with the planet of Mercury, planet Mercury empowered. Words were originally magic, and to quote a quote to illustrate the Magician archetype comes from Starhawk. Language shapes consciousness, and the use of language to shape consciousness is an important branch of magic. So January represents a new beginning of a cycle that comes through our communication, leading us towards prosperity by being flexible, objective, and creative. Before I get into the daily energy for 1 Eek or Wind on the 28th, all the planets appear to be moving forward from our vantage point on the Earth, although Mercury and Jupiter turn retrograde during this report cycle. So we've got a brief time before Mercury and Jupiter turn retrograde where all the planets are direct as 2016 begins. So the big change in January is Mercury changing directions as it moves retrograde on the 5th and then turns direct on the 25th. So the middle of the month would be a good time to avoid signing contracts or other legal papers or making major purchases or even taking a new job. And if you could postpone these types of activities, the terms will be much clearer after Mercury is moving direct. That may seem impossible, so if you can avoid these activities for a few days before and after Mercury changing directions on the 5th and the 25th, when the energy is at its most potent, that would be beneficial. Mercury retrogrades force us to slow down and pay attention to our lives, making us focus on the details of our experience. When looking at retrograde cycles of any of the personal or inner planets, it provides information about a correction to our present course. And during this report period, we have Mercury traveling through its first stage of the retrograde process, which began on December 20th and continues until we get to January 5th when it turns retrograde. So what we really look at the point where the planet starts to move backwards, and the point where it's going to appear to move forwards again. So in looking at this chart, this is the point where Mercury turns retrograde at 1 degree of Aquarius. This is the point where Mercury turns direct at 15 degrees Capricorn. So when Mercury crosses 15 degrees Capricorn on the 20th of December, that was when we began this first stage. And the first stage represents the shadow time between passing 15 degrees Capricorn and the point where the planet will eventually begin, which is the point where the planet will eventually begin moving forward again, and also the point where the planet slows, stops, and begins moving in reverse at 1 degree of Aquarius. So during this first stage, we receive information about needing to adjust our direction. The second stage is the actual retrograde phase, and this is a time to watch for events that occur related to the information that we received in the first stage. The third stage begins when the planet begins moving direct again until it crosses the line where it eventually turned retrograde, which it represents a time when we implement the information that we've got during this retrograde cycle. So we entered into the first stage for Mercury on December 20th. So from then until January 5th, that's the time period that we receive information about an adjustment that needs to be made in our lives. And then Mercury retrograde from January 5th to January 25th will be a time when we notice events that shift our thinking. And then from January 25th to February 14th, we're in the third stage where we implement the change in direction from the awareness that we gained through experiencing this process. And because Mercury retrogrades from Aquarius back into Capricorn, we've got two faces of the trickster. Mercury functions better in Aquarius than it does in Capricorn. I'd expect people to change their minds as Mercury changes signs. Aquarius will make us aware that our thinking has become antiquated and is no longer fresh, and this could lead to changes in ideology. Capricorn will have us reviewing what we do for work and whether it feels whether we feel it is providing enough stability in our lives. And if you look at the house of your astrological chart that contains 15 degrees Capricorn to 1 degree Aquarius, you can find out the theme where you're going to experience revisions, reviews, and rethinkings of characteristics represented by that house. For me, that would be the 8th house of transformation, death, and rebirth. So I'd set an intention related to using this energy to go into greater depths regarding my spiritual path. And beginning in Aquarius, I would want to be open to unexpected, surprising influences that reveal new information, perhaps regarding something outside of my comfort zone. No matter where the Mercury retrograde occurs in your chart, this often leads to changing choices, goals, and directions. In the world, look for the themes of completion through intellectual review of past, particularly related to communications about topics like the history of social consciousness, social justice, impartiality, freedom, individuality, and innovation when Mercury moves through Aquarius where it's exalted. And all the Mercury retrogrades in 2016 will begin in air signs, Aquarius, Gemini, and finally Libra, and then retrograde back into earth signs of Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. And as we begin January, Mercury is slowing down as it's going to turn retrograde at 1 degree Aquarius on the 5th. And when a planet it slows down to a stop from our perspective here on Earth, that planet is considered to be at the peak of its power. And Mercury being at the peak of its power always reminds me that the Greek god Hermes, who the Romans renamed to Mercury, was also the trickster god. He was the messenger of the gods, and if you weren't on his good side, you might not get the message, or it might be altered to mean something different than what was intended. In mythology, the trickster is a god, goddess, woman, man, animal, or spirit that creates mischief by playing tricks and acting outside the accepted rules of the community. And I want to share this quote from Joseph Campbell. Almost all non-literate mythology has a trickster hero of some kind. And theirs is a special property in the trickster. He always breaks in just as the unconscious does to trip up the rational situation. He is both the fool and someone who is beyond the system. And the trickster represents all those possibilities of life that your mind hasn't decided it wants to deal with. The mind structures a lifestyle, and the fool or trickster represents represents another range of possibilities. He doesn't represent the values that you've set up for yourself and smashes them. The fool is the breakthrough of the absolute into the field of controlled social orders. And for me, that is a great description of Mercury retrograde. And it also contains a formula for confronting a more powerful foe by being cunning and over fighting them on their own terms. And then we also have Jupiter turning retrograde during this Trisena period. And when Jupiter appears stopped at the opening of this Trisena, prior to appearing to move retrograde or in reverse motion from our perspective on the Earth on January 17th at 23 degrees of Virgo. And again, you know, when we talked about a planet being stopped, it's at the peak of its power. Jupiter, it was the king of the gods, and this is a planet, and it is about good fortune, opportunities, faith, religion, beliefs, and expansion. Virgo is about organization, health, and services. So we'll see these themes expanded at the beginning of January. Jupiter entered into its retrograde cycle period back on October 13th of 2015, where it which developed opportunities that will be reviewed when Jupiter turns retrograde on December 7th at 23 degrees of Virgo. So mostly what I find with Jupiter retrograde, as with any retrograde cycle, there's a review of the past. And with Jupiter, what gets reviewed are missed opportunities. When Jupiter turns direct on May 9th of 2016 at 13 degrees of Virgo, we'll become aware of a change in course regarding how we will expand our opportunities for organization and service. Jupiter will take a few days to build momentum in moving in reverse. In your personal life, you would want to look at 13 to 23 degrees of Virgo to become aware of the house that's currently feeling Jupiter's expansive influence. For me, Jupiter is in my 4th house of the home and inner world, so I might use this retrograde period to review my home environment, such as cleaning or doing home repairs, or some type of inner work on myself, since it also represents our inner world, the 4th house. So let's look at the daily vibrational energy for this Trisena. We have on December 28th, it's 1 Eek or wind, which is about unity experience through communication in the Mayan Zolkin calendar. I'm not going to be covering the daily lunar activity in these reports other than new and full moons, but that information is available on the New World Birth Daily Facebook post and also on the blogger New World Birth blog. The 29th is 2 Akbal or night. This is duality experience through contemplating the stars, as the sun is in a sextile to Neptune. So from our perspective here on the Earth, This is a 60-degree angle between the Sun and Neptune, which lowers the demands of our egos, allowing us to sense other people's energy and circumstances and making us more willing to help out. This could be positive for fundraising for a charitable organization. This also encourages spiritual and mystical knowledge and experiences through spending time alone in a meditative state, particularly given the energy for physical activities is lowered. This also helps to soften the energy for arguments associated with the square between Mercury and Mars. And we do have a square between Mercury and Mars, Mercury here in a 90-degree angle to Mars there from our perspective here on the Earth, which compounds the intensity with another difficult transit. This one has people feeling touchy and irritable, with almost any communication interpreted as a challenge. It's hard to imagine that someone doesn't get set off by the implied attitude of this transit. People will feel the drive to defend their ideas from the simple debate to an all-out fight. This is a time it would be important to realize that beliefs and thoughts can change and not to identify our ego with them. This is yet another transit that indicates a potential to be involved in accidents. And this is particularly likely for someone who's trying to suppress their anger. December 30th is 3 Con, or seed, or lizard, which is about taking action through planting seeds and making new connections. And at this point, we have Venus entering into Sagittarius, which brings the spirit of adventure to our love affairs. First attractions may seem very romantic, but the happy wanderer is not sure about sacrificing freedom for the relationship. Anyway, this is an outgoing energy for social engagements, travel, and spirited friendships. Venus also is about money as well as romance and socializing. So until the 24th, when Venus enters Capricorn, folks will feel as though they have more, as though money is more abundant with Venus traveling through Sagittarius. The 31st is 4 Chichan, or serpent, which is about stability through being flexible in the Mayan Soul King calendar. And then on the 1st, we have 5 Kimi. January 1st, 2016 is 5 Kimi, or transformation. This is about empowerment through releasing what no longer serves us. And at this point, we have Mercury entering into Aquarius. Which, due to turning retrograde on the 5th, will spend just 1 week in the sign of the water bearer before returning to Capricorn. Mercury moving through Aquarius shifts to the focus of communications and thinking to social consciousness, while being true to our individuality and to share our innovative ideas with groups and communities. The second is 6 Manique, or deer, being in the flow through being of service to others in the Mayan Soul King calendar. January 3rd is 7 Lamont, or star, or rabbit, or Venus, which is about reflection through being grateful for abundant relationships. And we have Mars moving into Scorpio after spending almost 2 months in Libra, which is the sign of its detriment. And so Mars has now found its way into the sign of its traditional rulership. Mars in Scorpio brings persistence and intensity, but also emotional sexuality. Scorpio Mars is hard-driving, resourceful, determined, relentless, purpose-directed, and it can be and can also be displayed as jealousy, anger, resentment, and hurt feelings. And Mars will be in Scorpio until March 5th. The 4th is 8 Maluk, or offering, balance through appreciating all creation in the Mayan Soul King calendar. And then the January 5th is 9 Auk, or dog, which, sorry, did I get this right? The fourth is 8 Maluk, offering a balanced experience through appreciating all creation. January 5th, 9 Auk or dog, patience experience through enjoying family and friends. And at this point, we've got Mercury turning retrograde at 1 degree Aquarius. And even folks who don't follow astrology are aware of that Mercury retrogrades affect communication, technology, and travel. This begins a time that shifts our review of information related to innovation and social reform, with a focus on the Aquarius themes of higher mind, group consciousness, and intuition. And from the 5th to the 25th would be a good time, again, to avoid signing contracts, legal papers, making major decisions, and even taking a new job. But of course, if you cannot postpone those activities, just try not to make those changes in the days before and after the 5th and the 25th, when Mercury is at its most potent, as it is slowed down in getting ready to change signs and change directions. Also on the 5th, we have Mercury square Mars again. So again, this is continues to be a difficult transit. Again, people's emotions, they're feeling touchy, irritable about communications. This can really set people off, where they feel like they have to defend their ideas. So it's important, as I said before, just realize that beliefs and thoughts can change, and not to identify our ego with them. So again, and this it can also, like I said, if you're suppressing your anger, this may involve being in some type of accident. Also on the 5th, we've got Venus in a square to Neptune. So from our perspective here on the Earth, Venus is at a 90-degree angle to Neptune. This is an alignment between planet octaves. Venus represents personal love. Neptune represents unconditional universal love. The romantic imagination is active under this transit, which can lead to unrealistic expectations regarding loved ones. Just remember, your partner is a mere mortal, and not holding them to an impossible romantic ideal that no one could or should try to attain. Relationships that are damaged by this transit are usually not based on reality. This is positive for daydreaming. It can lead to artistic expression. Overall, we're likely to feel an expansion in compassion and empathy, which benefits activities like meditation, music, and art, which may seem transcendent, but it's just not a great day for doing business and work on the material plane. And then also on the 5th, very busy day, the 5th, we've got the Sun conjunct Pluto. So they're at the same degree of Capricorn, which illuminates the underlying experiences, usually of a dark nature, that leads to fundamental evolutionary changes from within. This can bring power of changes that we see as major occurrences in the world, with the themes of growth, evolution, decay, and death, along with rebirth and regeneration. Some of us may have to contend with persons who are trying to exert unreasonable power over us, which will likely force us to defend our right to do things in a way that is correct for us. And with Pluto, this may have hidden elements that have powerful ramifications. The 6th is 10 Shuin, or monkey, which is about manifestation through creating something new in the Mayan Zolkin calendar. The 7th is 11 Eb, or road, which is about resolution through serving your community. And at this point, we've got Jupiter turning retrograde in Virgo from our perspective here on the Earth. And remember, retrogrades bring a time to review. Jupiter's about opportunities, so this may be a time when people are going to review missed opportunities, particularly related to health, organization, and or being of service. for this might be a time of thinking about a lost love, with whom you had considered having a potentially healthy relationship, or a job where you could serve others that was dropped by the wayside. Jupiter retrograde also has us reviewing any expansion that we encountered since Jupiter moved into Virgo on August 11th of 2015. Also on the 7th, we have the Sun in a square to Uranus. So from our perspective here on the Earth, the Sun is forming a 90-degree angle with Uranus, which is a disruptive transit, adding to the likelihood of upsets and behaviors that are upsetting to others, also unexpected mechanical problems, a sudden argument or separation within a relationship. With the Sun involved, we're talking about conflicts between egos. Folks will also be likely to feel restless, so it might be important to be conscious of this possibility and find a way to allow the restless energy to express itself rather than being shocked by how it gets expressed unconsciously. This adds, again, to more of that accident-prone energy of transits at this time. This is a time to realize that those accidents are not happening to you. You are creating them. And the drive to do something, free and liberating is really strong. Just try to exercise enough consciousness to give it expression without causing damage in your life. And then the 8th is 12 Ben, or reed or corn, which is about understanding through maintaining the home. And at this point, we've got Mercury returning to Capricorn. Again, reviewing practical information communications in the sign of business, government, industry, finance, where Pluto's been focusing on breaking down these systems since 2008. Mercury in the sign of the goatfish is serious in its communications and thinking. This begins a good period for business and thinking about goals for 2016. Also on the 8th, we have Venus conjunct Saturn. So from our perspective here on the Earth, Venus and Saturn are at the same degree of Sagittarius, where love and affection are being tempered by practical considerations. This can have a sobering viewpoint regarding relationships. Folks may seek the advice of older people, represented by Saturn, regarding relationships, represented by Venus. Saturn also is also limitation, so this might be a time of parting temporarily or breaking up. Relationships that begin under this influence are long-lasting and loyal, but not particularly exciting. For relationships that are going well at the time when Venus is merged with Saturn, it makes us aware of our commitments, which would be good for getting engaged or working on marital problems. Also on the 8th, we have the Sun sextile Chiron, which is illuminating our past wounds and bringing a deeper awareness to allow healing to occur. And then on the 9th, we have 13 Ish or Jaguar, movement to the next stage through enjoying nature, while we have the Capricorn New Moon at 19 degrees, 13 minutes of Capricorn, in harmony with Neptune, merging with Pluto and the Sun, challenged by Uranus. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, so this new moon represents new beginnings related to work, commitment, disciplines, elders, which might begin as a limitation or obstacle that must be overcome or at least bypassed so that the new energy can proceed. The lunation, sextile Neptune, influences us with a greater sensitivity to others' emotions, with possible psychic impressions for those who are open. Conjunct Pluto brings more intense moods rising to the surface from deep in our psyches. And square Uranus may have folks acting hasty and jumping to conclusions that may not be correct. New moons bring an opportunity to set an intention for manifestation on the following full moon. So you want to look at the house of your astrology chart that contains 19 degrees, 13 minutes of Capricorn to consider what area of your life is being activated by this new moon. For me, that would be my 8th house of transformation, death, and rebirth. So I've set an intention related to using this energy to go into greater depths regarding my spiritual path. Pluto is also in Capricorn, so this brings transformational elements to the new moon, so that there is a transformative purpose aligned with the new opportunities that are coming up. This new moon is particularly potent for making big changes through taking a leap of faith during the numerological 1 month of new beginnings as we begin 2016. Certainly releasing outdated limitations will be like removing your mask at the masquerade New Year's party to reveal a greater awareness of our authentic truth self, our new direction and purpose. So no matter what energies are affecting you during the one wind trisena, take some time to be in the flow of the planet by being in nature, watching a sunrise or a sunset, communing with the stars, being conscious of the moment through introspection, meditation, or being with somebody you love. Every day is a blessing, no matter what dramas beckon to distract us. And I believe we're all here giving the performance of a lifetime on this world stage. Just take some time to observe the play as well as act your part. Remember, you're a spiritual being that's having a human experience. I want to thank you for checking out New World Birth. The next segment of the Care and Feeding of a New World Age will be on January 10th for one man or eagle, with the sun entering into Aquarius. You can check us out on Facebook, YouTube, or the Mayan Magics website, and I encourage you to share this information as videos or as text as widely as you choose. And as always, I invite you to contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com if you have any questions or you wish to schedule a reading. And I am providing readings and wish to make this service available to the greatest amount of folks. So I've created 3 options with 3 levels of compensation, which these levels of compensation have stayed at the same level for years now. I am considering raising them. So if you are interested in getting a reading, contacting me sooner rather than later would get you the best deal. If you've been thinking about getting a reading, please contact me. I would love to provide you a reading during this uncertain times. You'll need to be able to either call me in Maine in the USA, or we can connect with Skype to receive your reading. And we are also accepting donations to keep these reports freely available. And you can contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com if you want to have instructions about how you can make a donation, which is always greatly appreciated. As always, I'm blessed that you've taken the time to connect with my passion for these ancient mysteries and their application to our journey during this incarnation. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste, in Lakesh, and look forward to connecting with you in the next Trisena report, or in a reading, or through email if you've got a question. All my best.